before I get to those issues, the entire keel area is covered with a thin layer of caulking. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, it's got thin layer caulking. So the props could be causing some vibration. I'm going to get a price, as I mentioned before. I haven't heard back from the guy down in Bronson as to what it would cost him to check them. We're going to get an Acme owes us a price as well. But if you look at this egg zinc, it's an anode, sacrificial anode. It may be causing you some balance problem right there. The second thing, it seems that your strut bearings are okay, but the second thing that we find is an issue, they're supposed to be between 1/2 of a diameter and 1 diameter of space between the prop hub and the strut. And obviously you got about 1/4 inch. The prop can't even be pulled without decoupling the shaft from the engine and sliding the shaft back to where I can get a prop puller on it. So I'm recommending a 1/2 inch spacer between the transmission coupler and the coupler on the prop shaft. It's an 1 1/4 inch prop shaft, so you should have somewhere between 3/4 of an inch. Well, actually, 1 1/4 inch will be 5/8 of an inch, and 1 1/4 inch space there where you have 1/4 inch. Same is true on both props. Also, we're missing the sacrificial anode from the rudders, and you are going to be in fresh water, so you know there is probably some. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just doing a video. It's not like you really have to have a sacrificial anode, especially if you're not leaving it in the water all the time. But they're obviously missing, so you may want to put that on. We didn't actually find any rot along the keel or the stem or the gripe, but we did find this caulk that is really kind of curious. We found an area next to the rudders that was filled with some of this caulk, and as well, and then the other thing that was of concern. Let me grab my creeper. My son wallered around on the floor. I'm not as good at walling around on the floor as I am rolling on a creeper. So we've seen an issue on what's called a chine cap. There's actually a very narrow piece of wood down here. Here's the seam right about here. Very narrow piece of wood, so that I'm assuming, I haven't actually talked to the designers of these boats, but I'm assuming that this is so that if you hit something, we're not replacing an entire side plank. We have just a small area that has to be replaced. Now, we ran into, on the same year of Hacker, it's a much smaller Hacker, but same year, we ran into a situation where we could see a crack in this chine cap, between the chine cap and the chine. So we've got one of those here. We've got another one here. I haven't really looked any further, but on this other boat that we were dealing with, we actually had water coming in to these areas as well. And of course, when you pull, so we had water entering the boat right here. So we're planning on, unless you tell me not to, we're planning on pulling the seats out, pulling the access hatches up under the seats, and and observing to see if we got water coming into these points or not. The fix that Hacker said was to fill that with epoxy. The problem is that everything expands. Even though this is all epoxy encapsulated, this wood still expands. It's a slower rate, but it still expands. So this guy had tried over and over to fix his leak, fix these cracks with epoxy, and when you put epoxy in there and then everything expands, the cracks just got longer. We literally took out like 3 screws. This is all supposed to be epoxy together. Over the length of his boat, there was like 3 screws holding it in place. We took those out, and I took a chisel to it, thinking I was going to have to break it off all the way and make a new one. And this thing just literally just popped off the boat. And this is the same type of construction as, in the same year as this other boat I was working on. You might, I'll send you a link to that boat as well. So we've got to address. Of course, here's your loading guide. That's not a big deal for us. We'll put some 3-inch pipe on that with a cap, and we'll have that taken care of. So I'm going to roll over to the other side and see. Oh, and now here's this yucca-pucky. This is caulking that was just troweled on the bottom. There's a seam here between your keel and your planks. This seam is covered with caulk that was troweled on. That indicates to me that there's a problem there. And we're dealing with that same crack. This is on the port side. We're dealing with that same crack. Let me have a crack over here. Yeah. And we got a crack over here as well. And this is where you were observing the leak. This will probably, we can repair this. This particular hole right here, you probably saw an 8-inch stream of water coming out. We'll drill that and dowel that, or face grain plug it with a bung. But you do have this area that is probably letting water in. I can't be sure. We will be sure after we dip this. Oh. So to get to this other side. So anyway, I'll check and see if we got a crack on this other side. My pathway is blocked. So I'll check to see if we got a crack on this other side that we need to address. So, and then give you a recommendation as to how we address it as well. All right, thank you.